This is the Mooncast.
See you, space cowboy.
Do you think? Let me shift over to this. Do you think? Or let me say this. Let me say it like this. How does a real estate crash look like to you in the UK? Because we know it's coming. How does that look like to you in the UK? And how do you think people can prepare for that crash when it does happen?
I think that a real estate crash, well, what the safest thing to survive a real estate crash is basically not to have it obvious. So in other words, to basically keep house prices exactly the same for 20 years, and then you just corrode the value of the house price with inflation. And they've done that in the past, and it seems to work because people aren't smart enough to realize that effectively they're losing the value of money because of inflation, right? They're not smart enough. Your normal folk out there, they won't realize that. They'll just say, my house is worth the same. And that would be the smartest thing to do. But when a black swan event happens, for instance, a war, or a global catastrophic event happens, a pandemic or something like that, where banks are no longer able to increase lending, they're no longer able to lend money to people, and they're no longer able to keep interest rates low because it's just not possible, you'll see an immediate housing crash. So yeah, how would it look like? I can't see the housing market dumping more than 30-40%. 30% would be the max probably. But in reality, they say 30% is the max, but that's because nobody's able to sell. So how would it look like if everybody had to sell? Now you imagine, I mean, you know how crypto works, for instance. So you imagine the housing market was based on a automatic market maker scheme like Uniswaps, and people could just dump their houses on there. How low could it go? It would literally dump by 80%, 90%. Like, because everybody will be, yeah, it would do, because people would have the ability to sell their houses. But if you can't sell your house because nobody's buying it, then really what is it worth? Do you understand me? It's probably not worth anything. Do you get what I mean? This is the problem. It's hard to say how much it's going to drop, because if there isn't anybody buying it, then the only people who are willing to buy it, they're not going to pay you a lot. We've seen this already happen in the business sector in the UK, where catering businesses, coffee shops, that were once selling for 100 to 200,000, they're now literally selling for 20, 30K. But people don't speak of this because it's in the business sector, you see, and it doesn't affect people, the general public, but it affects businesses. Business valuations, for instance, in the UK have gone to nothing. Like, it's just, it's shocking.
Wow, they've actually dropped.
Oh, they've dropped. I mean, I know of a business now. He basically sells burgers and fries. Was worth 900,000 20 years ago, he told me, and he sold it. He sold it last year for 190,000.
Oh wow!
I mean, yeah, they're dropping.
That's crazy. But what was his cash flow? I mean, I don't know if you went too deep into his business to understand like his revenues or how much.
Well, listen. If you've got a business in the UK, your cash flow is substantially less than what it was 20 years ago, because people don't have the same money. So what's happened now is the internet's taken over, whereby you've got a second partner now. You've got your Deliveroo, you've got your Uber Eats, you've got your Just Eats, and these people, they take a profit. So even if you're making the same money, the profit's less. And then you have the government that has imposed a bunch of rules and restrictions on you, and there's more red tape. So yeah, I mean, business valuations have gone to dirt, really. They're not doing that well. So will it bounce back? I don't know. I don't know. It's one of them. Nobody really wants to own a business now. It's far easier to be employed.
Yeah.
But tech businesses, they're doing well. That's the thing. It's shifted. It shifted all to tech.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree too as well. I think part of the issue you could probably maybe talk about this a bit is the population decrease, which means there's less people with purchasing power within the working population, which have should have the most amount of working capital, or at least velocity of capital, right? But I
I
don't know.
think I think listen, I think the mentality of people has changed. So whereas in the past they would literally go buy food, take it home, eat it, whatever, or go out, spend money. I think now people have to be selective where they go and spend money. And we have this social media culture whereby when they spend money, they have to show it off. They have to take a picture. They've got to post it. Well, with the greatest respects, nobody's going to go into a burger joint or to a place selling fries and frigging taking picture of a McDonald's, right? They're just not going to
Yeah.
do it. They're going to go
Mm-hmm.
into these glitzy bars. They're going to buy a cocktail or whatnot, take a picture of it, put it on the Facebook or on the Instagram. Hope they get a couple of likes, and that gives them the validation of whatever it is they're hoping to get on the end of the day. So I think people's attitude has shifted on spending money from what's actually needed to what's actually a lot of people they just spend money to just try and show off that they have money. And I think that's kind of where it's gone wrong. It's that's why your low level places they're suffering because they're not glitzy anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Do do you think World War III is inevitable?
Yes, I think we're heading towards that. I think I I just can't see it being avoided. I think by 2026, I think something major is going to happen. I hope not, but I do have that feeling. And I don't believe it matters who is the president or who's the prime minister or who's in charge. I think either way it was going to happen. You know, I think the people behind the scenes it's been brewing for a long time. So yeah,
Do you
I
think that
think what
the UK is ready for it?
I don't think the world is ready for it, but I think when it happens, I think they will have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
This is
Do you
this
think the
is this is
youth? Do you think the youth
no,
itself? Do you think the youth?
no. I don't think the youth are ready for it. No,
He just said straight up like no.
no,
You got
no.
no faith in the youth at all?
If you've seen the youth, if you've seen them,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I see them every day, and uh, they don't know they're born. They, I think they're going to
Oh
have to do a
man.
lot of growing up very fast. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think they'll be ready for whatever happens. No.
Yeah. Man, the implications of World War III is. I'm just thinking about it because, I just think about strategically, where to be at, locations to be at, where to position yourselves. I don't think an island is like the. Some people may argue with me on this, but I just don't think islands may be the best suitable locations to be.
Listen,
Um,
I think it's difficult to bomb everywhere, right? I mean, it's just not possible. So I think the worst places, rather than the best places to be, the worst places are major cities, major worldwide cities. And I think if you're
yes.
just yeah, and I think if you're not in a major worldwide city, I think it's just not cost effective to bomb somebody on a farm in Yorkshire, for instance. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it doesn't work for them. It's not cost effective to bomb somebody in who lives on Route 66 in America, for instance. It's just
Mm-hmm.
there's nobody there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the worst place to be is somewhere congested. That's it. That's all you
Yeah.
need to do. Just avoid those places.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. It will be quite fascinating to see how things shape up. I'm just looking at the major players. The usual suspects: the U.S., NATO, China, Russia, Iran, South, or not South, but North Korea. I mean, it's going to be very, very interesting. I think when it really does pop off, and I think a lot of people aren't prepared, and it's sad that they're not. Most people just unfortunately don't pay attention to geopolitics, and they get blindsided. And I think things are going to get really, really tough before they get better. Do you think, because my thesis is that we're going into a multipolar technocentric future, but I don't know, like, if that's the kind of future you see after all of this, or do you think there's going to be a new hegemon to take over and take the ranks? I don't believe that. People are saying it's going to be Russia and China. They're going to take everything. I don't think that. I think that we're going to go into a multipolar world, and it's going to be technocentric. But what are your thoughts on that?
What if I told you that $10 could change your life? At Helicode Academy, we're making it happen. For a limited time only, you can take courses like cybersecurity, technical writing, and Web3 marketing just for $10. We listened to hundreds of you, and your feedback inspired us to give you this huge discount. We know how life-changing these skills are, and now there's no excuse not to level up in tech. The clock is ticking. Don't miss your chance to master a high-level skill for the cost of your next meal. $10, new skills, endless opportunities. Start today at Helicode, and as always, see you, Space Cowboy.
To be honest with you, I don't know. I wouldn't like to. I wouldn't like to guess really, but I just think that a lot of the main countries, a lot of them are gonna suffer a lot financially, and it will just be a case of building yourself back up. I think some countries won't exist after; they will just vanish completely from the map, and they will just fuse with other countries. Again,
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting.
yeah, I just think that, yeah, I think that some countries just, particularly in the Middle East, they won't exist as they are doing now. They'll have different names or they'll merge with another country. But I think your United States, your UK will always exist. Your France, your Germany. I just think that they just won't be the same power as they once had. I think after a war, it would they would struggle. And the problem is what happened in the last war is Germany, after they were destroyed, they were given a lot of help from the world, weren't they, to kind of build themselves back up. Same happened in Japan, but I just can't see anybody helping the West, you know? There's, yeah, you know,
You'd have to be a fool to. I feel like, as a country, to do that. I mean,
yeah, I mean, maybe China, maybe
oh, they would
China,
help,
maybe
all right.
Japan.
They would help, all right.
Yeah, they would help, I suppose. China and Japan would help. But I guess it'll be conditional, won't it? And there'll be some terms attached to it. So I think that's the problem, you see. Whereas in the last war, when the UK and the US went to war and they destroyed Germany and the UK suffered, everybody kind of somewhat helped Germany get built back up. Everybody, the US economy was booming, the UK was doing fine. I mean, it took a while for the UK to get fine, but it was doing okay. It got a lot of help from America at the time. But I just think if we enter a third world war now, and all these countries enter into a war, who's going to help? And in reality, this is what we're doing now. We're funding this Ukraine and Russia war, and people are suffering in our country because of what's going on there, because we're funding it through taxes, which should be spent here.
Yeah.
You know, and it's exactly the same. And that money, you're not going to get it back. You see.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is a scam, anyways. I mean, it's like a Ponzi scheme, right? So they're sending money, not just UK, just anybody they're sending money to these Ukraine, Israel. It's not just those two areas, by the way. There's also, there's shenanigans going on in Congo, still also as well in in South Sudan. But that's the propaganda is focusing on Israel and Ukraine for now. But the point I want to make is they're sending money over there. Then these, let's say for instance, in this simple example, U.S. sends money to Ukraine. Ukraine then buys weapons from the U.S., which makes the U.S. profitable, right? Lockheed Martin and military companies like this get rich, and the stakeholders of those companies are the damn politicians themselves. So it's a fucking it's a money laundering, right?
It
So
basically, in a way, our tax dollars are being paid to fund them to buy arms from us.
yes,
So in reality, it's a way of funneling money from the people and concentrating it on the people who are selling these arms in a way
yeah,
that we don't realize what's going on, and then they sell us the
exactly,
narrative. So
exactly. You got
yeah,
it.
so it's a scam. And to be honest with you, I mean, I don't believe they actually care too much about the people. I don't think these people, they don't care about Ukraine. They don't care about Russia. They don't care about any of that. Um, I think it is
No,
just money.
yeah, it's
Maybe,
always been.
yeah, it's always been money, but I think maybe Israel might be a little bit different there because I think a lot of them might have a vested interest there. But again, I mean, wars outside Israel, I think a lot of it has to do with just selling arms. So yeah, in a way, after that happens and after the breakdown of that happens, where are we going to be at? You know, who's going to fund? Who's going to save our asses? Because obviously, the people that have been selling the arms, they're not going to sit there trying to fix the country, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely going to be a shift, and if you just look at it, I mean, the global south is just really well positioned right now. I mean, they're really well positioned. Um, I just look at the population sizes alone. I mean, that's a consumer base that you can use and leverage for business, right? Because they have population. Um, everywhere, also they have the population to help fund the older generation, right? Too as well. So I look at it from the resources are there, right? Obviously, the majority of them aren't controlled by them, especially in Africa. Most of them aren't controlled by Africans. Um, but the point that I'm trying to make is once World War III happens and people now see that the West is weak, they can then take back control of their sovereignty in their lands. And I think that's why again, my thesis is a multipolar future because I think people are going to start thinking about themselves first. This is why I really admire the Polish president because he's Poland first, and I love it. I love it. I love his mentality. You know, every person should be every leader in the nation state should be thinking like that. You should be focused on your country, self-sustaining your country, and then after that, then you can focus on other people. He
Yeah, I
didn't let
mean,
the
his
immigrants in, by the way.
no. Well, again, if he's able to sort to keep crime low in his own country by doing that, I think that's the way to go. Um, but again, I think if you have the right immigration, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's the wrong immigration that is a problem. And
Correct.
I think sometimes crime is learned through um, social constructs. In other words, through your family, through your connections. And I think if it if people don't fear crime and they're okay with it, I mean, looking at the UK, crime's just crazy, right? And that crime will never go away, and it's always the same people. You
Mm,
can't put them in jail, but instead of preventing them from being criminals, you know, whereas, I mean, looking at Europe, you just don't have the same level of crime. It just doesn't happen because people they're embarrassed. They have families. They have I don't know what to say. They're bound by their family construct. They can't act out because it's going to bring shame to them. Whereas in the UK, you know, it doesn't matter. So I don't know, man. I mean, it is better for a country to focus on its population first, of course. But at the
yeah.
same time, that population needs to be right. You can't focus. You need to improve the population. rather than have problems with it. So I think that's a problem which is happening not only in the UK, but I think in America, is that they're not focusing on improving people. If you look at,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that. I think instead of going into the ghetto in America and fixing everything and making sure people respect one another, they just leave them. And I just think that's just the wrong approach. You know,
Yeah, I mean they don't invest in it, it's not a design error, right? A lot of these things aren't design errors. They're by design. It's the same with the banking infrastructure, right? And fractional reserve banking. I used to think that these were design errors, and then I realized, oh no, this is all by design, you know, and that's just the reality of the situation. So we just kind of have to play around these current rules that were set. You know, nobody asked to be here. We know nobody asked for our sperm to reach the egg, right? But somehow it did, and here we are. Uh, but I wanted to ask you too, because I'm very curious about the pension schemes there, and also how are the pensioners? What is the average amount that pensioners are receiving per month,
okay,
and
all
and
right.
how are they surviving currently?
Okay, so the pension age in the UK is 67, I think, 66 or 67. So
Okay.
you have two types of pensions. You have your private pension, which is a pension that you create on your own through a private company. Um, well, you have three kinds of pensions. You have a private pension, a workplace pension, and a state pension. So your workplace pension is something that I think you're entitled to it at the age of 57, and your private pension again at 57. But it's not a lot, you see. It's not a lot unless you work for a company that puts a lot of money on the side for you. Now your state pension that you get at 20 at 67, sorry, and you get, I think it's £260 a week. That's it. So
I
most
mean,
people, yeah, go on.
no, I was just gonna say, go ahead, go ahead. I'll go after you. Go ahead.
Right. Well, most people would just have that. That would just be their pension.
Mm,
Um, and then because the thing is that the private pension, it won't be enough. It just, what you get, it just, like me, for instance, I can talk on myself. I've got my I've got a bit of a workplace pension. I think I've got maybe 4 or 5 thousand in it, which is nothing. It doesn't generate money. It's just there. And the way
yeah,
they do things is they scam you on the fees. So when you come to draw it out, yeah, the fees are just horrendous. So we've got a company, a workplace pension company, and the fees are just insane. But the way they do things, when you draw your pension out, if it exceeds 12,500 a year, or I think it's 12,800 a year, you pay tax on top of it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you pay, yeah, you pay tax on top of it. So even if you combine your workplace pension with your state pension, you're going to pay tax on top of it. Is it enough to survive? I don't think so. 12,000 a year. I think, let me just do the calculation here. So how much did I say? 260 a week or something?
yes. 260 a week.
It's about that, yeah. Let's say 270. It's here, say, was it 54 weeks in a year, is it, roughly?
Yeah,
Uh, so you get 14,000 a year. Like, if you rent a house, you'll probably need 10,000.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what you have to live on. Now, I think, to be honest with you, I think it's less than that. I think it, honestly, I think it's less than that. So my dad, that's what he gets. Let me just see, how much is the state pension per year? Let me see what it says, because I think it's, yeah, it's £221 a week. It stands out. That's what it says here.
Okay.
So that's not great.
Yeah,
But
that's not that much.
yeah, 221 and 20p it says. So yeah, you still have to pay your council tax. You still have to pay your electricity, your gas, your water. Yeah, I mean, your water's near enough £1,000 a year. So
So unless your house is paid for, you're pretty much screwed.
You're screwed, man. You're screwed. If you don't have a house paid for, you won't be able to survive now in the UK with your state pension, or you're married. If you're married and she gets one and you get one, possibly you can make do, but on your own, no chance. Yeah, you
Wow.
need something else to subsidize it. A lot of
Yeah.
people, what they do though, is they draw equity out of the house they own to top up that pension. So even if they own a house, they would start remortgaging it or refinancing it, whatever you call it, to draw equity out so they can basically live a bit better. Um, but yeah, it's not great if you're a pensioner. That's the truth. Yeah, a lot of them are still working though. That's the thing. They come in the shop. They're 70, 75 years old. I see them every day, and they're still working.
Man, that's terrible. And the sad thing is when I speak to when I'm in different locations around the world that are outside of the West, and I speak to people, they always want to go to the West. They always want to go to UK. Like when I'm in Bulgaria, they always want to go to UK, and I'm like, when I'm here, anywhere I'm at, when I'm on a continent in Africa, they want to go to UK, US,
Yeah, yeah,
Canada,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I try to explain to them that, hey, like those glory days are over. Like
They're
all the
gone.
action is,
They're,
yeah.
they're gone.
They don't
Yeah,
listen
yeah,
to
they're
me.
gone. I mean, listen,
You know?
it's a bit like the phones, right? We all know
Mm-hmm.
that the best phones are these Chinese phones, right? These crazy
Xiaomi,
yeah,
yeah.
they're the best phones, right?
Huawei, yeah.
Yeah, they're the best phones. But your Apple still has that shiny name, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are just always going to side towards Apple because it's given that name and people think a lot of it until eventually they own a different phone. And I think the same
Yes.
happens for the UK. The UK and America, they still have the shine, but I think it's not shining as much now, right? I think that's what people are realizing, And
Slowly.
I think
Slowly.
I'm slowly, yeah. I mean, people still think it's Great Britain, but it's not. People still think it's the US of A, but really, a majority of the US is, yeah, it's not a high standard of living. Put it that way. And there's pockets that are, but there's a lot that needs to be done to make it a higher standard of living. And I think that people who, for instance, may live in Iceland or may live in I don't know, Estonia or Lithuania or somewhere, they probably have a better standard of living. And that
Oh, for
sounds
sure.
nuts.
Dude, in Bulgaria, the standard of living is way better than it is in the UK. I can attest to that. Way better.
And and I think
I would even argue in. Go ahead. Go ahead.
a lot of it has to do with the crime though, right? So in the US, you can't just walk at night thinking you're
No.
safe, right? I'm guessing.
No.
And the same is happening in the UK where you can't just walk at night. You can't. But in Bulgaria, you can walk at 2 in the morning, right?
Yeah. No problem.
And to me, how much is that worth for somebody like you to be able to walk whatever time you want, whenever you feel like it, knowing that you're not going to get into potential conflict?
Oh, it feels amazing, bro. Like just the peace you get of and the thing is, it's coming for someone like me who I've lived in very very harsh environments like the hood in the states, or I've had to go through Afghanistan. So for me, peace is priority, man. Like whenever I land in a location, I think about, could I live here? Is it peaceful, and are people going to treat me like a human, or are they going to treat me like an outsider? They're going to try to just treat me differently than they would the average person that's
I mean,
living out there.
and that's the thing. I mean, having that element of safety, being safe in your own city or in your own home, knowing that there aren't any immediate threats that you can possibly have outside your home on a day-to-day basis, knowing that you're safe, how much is that worth? And on the end of the day, it's priceless, man. I mean that's how I see it. And the problem with the UK now is you're having this crime, and it's always been like that.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for the police to respond because there's not so much of it going. They're not going to respond to it. In fact, somebody told me once, he said the police are not a proactive team, they're a reactive team. They react to crime. They're not proactive in preventing crime. And that's kind of what you're finding. So in other words, they know the people now that are going to be the future criminals, and they're
Yeah.
not doing anything to prevent them becoming criminals. And
No
and I
investment.
think there's no investment. They know the kids, they know the youths that are going to be the future criminals. They know who their parents are, they know the problems, but they can't do anything about it because they're too preoccupied handling current crime that's already happening by existing criminals. And I think this is the problem. You see, this is why countries go downhill, because you know the crime's so high, and then what do people have to live for? You know,
Imagine 10xing your earnings capacity to 100K per year while working remotely at the comfort of your own home. We are in the exponential growth phase of technological advancements. That means AI, AR, VR, robotics, and of course, Web3 technologies taking over the job market. At HeliCode Academy, we train students on Web3 hard skills and link them to employment in the job market. Find out more at helicode.xyz. And as always, see you, Space Cowboy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. It's very interesting because people will tie crime to like a racial group, or they'll tie it to like a religious group. I
no.
just think crime happens when there's economic instability.
Yeah, it's to
Yeah.
do with poverty. It's to
Yeah,
do with poverty. Yeah, because
that's it.
if they have something to go for them, what you're saying, somebody who's born black, for instance, is going to be a criminal, or somebody who's born Chinese is automatically a criminal. It doesn't work like that. It's to do with there's no opportunities, and
Yeah.
hey, this is an avenue to make money, and then they justify it, right? I mean, if you look at them people in London who steal phones, I don't know if you've seen the documentary,
Yeah. It's pretty funny, bro.
right? For them, it's a business, right?
Hmm.
And the reason they're doing it is because there's no opportunity for people like that, and now they're making an obscene amount of money with all this opportunity, and for them, it's the job they're in, and they don't see it as wrong. They say, well, if they've got their phone insured, or if they can afford that phone, they can afford another phone. They don't see it that bad.
Yeah.
So I guess would they be doing it if they were preoccupied in a job that they had to do, like had to work and had to earn money, a proper job? And the answer is probably no. So I think a lot of this crime has to do with a lack of employment and a lack of skill sets. And now,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to touch up. You have jobs in the UK. If you go on the job websites, one job might have 600 to 700 applicants. I mean, who's going to get employed?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. The funny thing is, the statistics I think is around 70% of people who hire either internally or from referral anyway. Um, so if you don't have like any insider or somebody that a network to be able to get the job, it's going to be very hard for you too. And I think also another issue too is it's not a there's not a job scarcity. It's a skill set scarcity. You know, I think people don't know the right skill sets that are in demand right now in the market, right? And this is why I built HeliCode, because
well,
I'm
listen,
trying to.
the problem is as well, I need to say that the companies employing people, they don't really provide the training needed to nurture them into that job. So
True.
they want to get people the finished product. They don't want to train anybody. It's like, imagine if, I mean, I've got a degree and I've got postgraduate. Imagine if I apply for a job and they say to me, right, listen, you don't have the relevant skill sets, but we're willing to hire you as a junior, and we're going to train you over an 8 to 9 month period at this salary. Would you accept? Now, obviously, I've got no job, and I say, yeah, sure, and I'd accept. And then within 9 to 10 months, if I enjoy the job, They're going to give me more money after they've trained me, and then they're going to increase their staff. But I don't see companies doing that. I see them just posting ridiculously high requirements, um, which nobody seems to have. I see random people applying for the jobs that don't have any of these skills, hoping for the best. And I see they themselves wasting a bunch of time trying to filter through the CVs. So I think, yeah, I think the job market it kind of works like that now. And that's why they hire people internally, like you said, and through referrals.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue too as well, there's less of an incentive to invest in the junior talent because they usually end up bouncing around now. Like Gen Z has the highest rate of switching from job to job, right? So that's part of the issue too as well. There's no commitment on the side of the Zoomers, but then there's also then it reflects then on the businesses to also then want to show commitment. So both sides aren't showing commitment at all. So I think that's where a lot of the issues lie, and I don't think that that's going to change either. I think that's something that's it's difficult, right? It's difficult because it's one of those chicken and the eggs, isn't it? At the end of
That's
the day.
it.
You know, so but I do think that a lot of people, and especially they're unskilled in the right particular verticals they need to be in, right? Because they still think that the old verticals are the ones that are dominating, and they don't understand that there's new verticals. This is why I call it the exponential growth phase that we're in. You need to be getting into robotics. You need to be getting into Web3. You need to be getting into AI. You need to be getting into VR. You need to get into AR. You know, that's where the jobs are. I mean, that's where people are getting hired. My co-founder has a friend that he lives in Nigeria, so he works remotely. Never ever stepped foot in the States. And he's now working for Chainlink, and he's making like $200,000 a year doing smart contract development.
Yeah,
Right?
that's great. I mean, listen, that's what
You
you
know,
want. You want people, um, but on the end of the day, maybe he was lucky, right?
but he's also assertive to put himself in position to be more lucky than others.
Yeah, 100%. But some people they're not as assertive. But it doesn't mean that a company's not going to invest in them. And I think that's where we're going wrong here. I think businesses need to be investing um, in the people they hire ultimately to have the staff that they want. So if you want a certain skill set or certain people to work for you, you hire 10 people, you train all 10 of them, six of them will go or four of them will go, bounce about. You're still left with five, six pretty good staff. So I think this is this is the problem we have is the fact that companies aren't they don't have a training center in their business. It's not in their business model. And I just think that's wrong. I think all businesses, whatever business you are, if you're hiring staff, you need an active training center in that business to get the skill set that you want. And if you don't have that, if you don't even have a partner to provide that skill set that you want, and you don't have the facilities to help people to train them up, then how do you expect to have the staff that you want? I
Yeah,
mean,
and
to me that's where it somewhat ends, and that's where we've gone wrong. I think companies are just they just want the unattainable a lot of the times, and I think people out there they're not given a chance. And I think a lot of you know some people apply for 100 jobs before they land a single job, and I just think that's nuts. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. But
I
but
mean,
then
I,
again,
I
it's. Go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, who's to say that I work at a different model. So the way I worked is I would hire as many people as I could. I would look at them, I would interview them, I would make sure that they appear to be hardworking and they have good morals. I would hire them knowing that they know nothing. I would train them from nothing. And if they've lasted a year, they've lasted a year. If they've lasted 4 years, they've lasted 4 years. If they've lasted 6 years, they've lasted 6 years. But on the end of the day, I'm going to invest in somebody that doesn't know anything for 6 months or has a
Yeah,
very basic understanding of the skills. So, what I'm trying to say by doing that, I have the people that I want working with me. Now, those people tomorrow might leave, and I might have to do exactly the same thing. But in the core of my business is to train the people that I need, right? And I just don't see many companies doing that.
Dude, it's funny that you speak about this right now because that part of the, again, reason why I decided to build HeliCode was because I was getting annoyed with people having or complaining about lackluster talent. Companies complain about lackluster talent or there's a talent shortage, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, well, what are you doing about it, right? Who's going to be the one that's going to train them properly on what you need, right? Because people don't know what you need if you don't put them through some form of training or some sort of like system, right? To where they can learn.
Really, they should have a training manager. They should have a training manager to train them.
Yeah.
If they should, they should, but they don't.
And that's where the issue lies. And again, this is why how you talked about companies should have a vertical where they have just for training only. And this is what we plan to do is partner with these blockchain companies to retrain and also upskill, because there's always new skills within the blockchain space. I mean, just last year, there modular chains and all these different sorts of new variations and flavors of AI agents and etc. that come about. So the technology is always evolving. And so if you learn something a year ago or even 6 months ago even, there's new stuff that comes out that you got to be prepared for, especially if you're in like fields like cybersecurity, right? So that's a field where it's always evolving and you got to keep up with it because you have to be the one that's monitoring these systems and networks so that people assets and et cetera and IP are protected. So yeah, man, I think that this is again why I have a passion for training. And I've been someone that's been training people since I was 10, where I helped train my brothers, and then I joined the army, and then I became a sergeant, and I was responsible for others to train people. I was So for me, I have a passion for it, like you do too as well. So for me, I'm in the perfect space to help.
Listen, if your business is as good as your staff, and if you don't have the right training in place and you don't train them properly, you're not going to have a business, and it's that simple. You can't expect. I mean, I'm sorry to say this, you can't expect your existing staff to start training staff. I mean, a lot of the times that doesn't work. You have to have somebody dedicated who's basically the training manager, who's been there for a long, long time, who has the patience, who knows the ins and outs to train people. The skill sets needed. He's going to know if somebody's committed and if somebody isn't committed. And if they're not committed, he can show them the door. If they are committed, he's gonna give them the time of day. And I think this is the problem that we're having, is that there isn't anybody there to filter staff. There isn't anybody there to filter. There's no companies in place where they have a training manager who's been there for 10, 12 years, 14 years. I mean, people normally change jobs every 3 to 4 years, and I think that's just dreadful. But anyway, there isn't somebody there who's been in there a long time to just say, right, this person is good for me, this person is not. And what they do is they bring them in. You have trainees training trainees, effectively. Somebody who might have been there for a year or 2 years, thinking that now they're in a position to train people. And I've seen it happen in my case. I've been doing my job, working for my dad for 20 years, about 25 years. So when I hire somebody, I know within the first day how long that person is going to need to learn the job. I know if they're going to learn the job, I know if they're going to last, and I know if they're going to go and when they're going to go. Now, it's crazy for me to know this information, but that information you can't get in a textbook. That information you get through experience. And I think if you don't have the relevant people in your business training staff, like who've been doing it for a long time, who've seen the colors of people, then they'll have no idea. And that's why they depend on recruitment companies and possibly on your business, on HeliCode, where they would get somebody who's somewhat ready trained, because they're going to say to themselves, well, it's just cheaper to do it this way. But in reality, had they done it properly, um, Helicode probably wouldn't exist,
Exactly.
because they wouldn't need you, right? But the fact is, the way it's going now, because they want the finished article straight away, you have to exist, and you are the broken chain. Really, you are the chain that needs to connect the employers to the employees, and you're going to
Exactly.
provide that and you're going to provide that training. So I think that in itself, the model will work based on that. But in reality, um, the company should have been doing their own training anyway, right?
Exactly. But they're not doing it, and I think it's partly due to the fact too that we have a new influx of entrepreneurs that are coming online, and they just have a different mentality. I think people don't like training because it's more of the dirty work. It's more the roll up your sleeves, and it requires a lot of patience, a lot of energy. They just want whatever it is that they want done. That is what the company wants, right? They don't want to have to deal with the whole process of it.
Well, I listen. It's like you go to the burger joint and you buy a ready done burger, right? You press a button and the food comes delivered to your door. You go on Amazon and the stuff gets delivered the next day. People have been conditioned for this instantness, right? They've been conditioned to get things like yesterday. But sometimes, if you want something the way you want it, and that's the way you want it to work, the only way you're going to make that sandwich the way you want it is to make it right. And I think if somebody cares
Yeah.
about his business, I think they would be focusing a lot more on their training. But the truth is, they're not, and I don't think they ever will. I think they're likely to settle for people that they've not trained from the ground up. And that being said, they're likely to use educational providers like Helicode to do that. And I've
Yeah.
just seen that LinkedIn has their own. LinkedIn basically bought lynda.com, which was a training program similar to Helicode. And now you can actually do training on LinkedIn, which is crazy. But I don't know if it's any good, but that's what I've heard.
It's good. It's good. I've used LinkedIn training before for when I was trying to learn about networks and etc. In the beginning stages of trying to get reacclimated into IT. So it actually has really good training sessions. And I had the premium because I was in the army. So they actually give you 1 year free premium if you were in the army. So yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm not gonna lie.
And now again, you've got providers like Udemy, which Udemy is a bit lower grade, should we say, but there's a lot of content on Udemy where it allows content providers to provide educational material on, on whatever you want. Possibly be Web3, could possibly be for anything, life skills, whatever you want, anything that you take an interest to. But there's no link with Udemy to employers. It's just a case of you training it for your own hobby, right? So
Yes.
again, that's not going to increase your employability per se, but it's just going to help you learn something that you're of interest to. Maybe if you're a business owner or you want to create your own business, I think Udemy would help, but I don't believe it would help a CV, for example.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It needs to be something a little bit more commercialized. That's what we're trying to build, and what we've done is, we strategically partnered with some really big players in the education space, like ISEC, like the University of Lagos, um, like there's another one too I can't mention right now because we're still under NDA. But yeah, so yeah, man, dude, I think we'll close it off here for now. Man, this is. I didn't think we were gonna go off for this long, but it's usually like that with us, anyways. So I would definitely like to do this again. Uh, Talk a little bit more about the crypto market. I think. I don't know if you're up for it though. If you're up for it, we
Yeah,
could
yeah.
definitely do
Well,
this again.
listen. I'm up for it. Sure, yeah. I again. Uh, I mean, I could talk now about the crypto market, but we'll probably be here for another hour, I guess, if I do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the crypto market's hot. Where it's going to end, where it's going to start. I think we're looking at 2026 before the bear market hits. I think 2025 is going to be the most interesting year of yet. So my prediction would be 150 to 170k Bitcoin, and yeah, I think it's going to dump right down to about 60k. You know, you and me, we've both spoken about this in the past, and cycles always have patterns, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, man, I appreciate you for coming on. This concludes this episode of the Mooncast, man. And see you in the next one, man. And peace.